Yeah, g'day everyone and welcome back to the TryPod Live with Winnie and Clarkey for our round 26 NRL preview show where we will break down every single game, give you some best bets and hopefully make a bit of money while we all enjoy the regular season as it comes to a close. With that in mind, let me hand it over to a man I saw only 23 hours ago. Winnie, how have you been since?
And everyone else saw me too, and I got the feedback. They said, put the hat back on. The first comments about my hair as well. And it definitely falls out with every losing best bet. And I've had, over 2,000 losing best bets in the last 10 years. Luckily, close to 3,000 winning ones, but not last week. After 10 good weeks, as we covered on the recap, 0-3 and lost the mixed matchup last round, which is always going to hurt, but it hurts me even more when I know that each of those three games were every chance with 20 to go, got none of them, and I left some winners out there. But again, we covered that on the recap. We covered our weekend away. We rendezvoused at the Titans Lounge. We saw that game. Check out the recap if you're interested in all that. And I respect the audience, honestly, so much and the intelligence of our regular listeners that I never feel like I need to convince you if I did really well or if I didn't do that bad. Like you judge it, you decide. I just try and talk about what I took out of them. Round 25 was a highlight socially, hanging out with you and Alex and Tristan and some pod crew, but it was a smack in the face in terms of results. I have to admit that. We are in a short turnaround, but I will say I'm highly determined to get into finals form with just a couple of regular season rounds to go.
100%, man. And unlike the Storm with the short turnaround, we are not resting. We're both here live, ready to go, mate. So let's draw back the curtains. Let us know, what have you got for your best bets this round?
Okay, I have 4 best bets to share for round 26. So we're going to start with Manly on Friday night. I'm going to take the first half line, plus 2.5, $1.88, Ladbrokes and Neds against the Doggies. And for me, I think it's a good spot for Manly. They got humbled. They took their eye off the ball after a great start against the Tigers, but Manly's close to full strength, can match it with the Dogs. I understand how good Canterbury's been, and I think everyone's caught up to that fact, and yet Canterbury keeps beating the line. And I know Canterbury's shown the ability to play without Critter, but it still lowers the ceiling of this side. Manly needs the game more, although it's high importance for both. I think it'll be low scoring, it'll be tight, points at a premium, and I'm willing to take that first half start and give Manly every chance of an upset as well. I'm going to take Penrith to win both halves against Souths, and that's $1.85. You can copy me at Jacob Win on Dabble. I just placed it seconds ago. I'm going to take the Dragons minus 2.5 against Para at $1.90. It's 2.5 or 3.5 everywhere. Toppy, lads, take your pick. Explain to me why this line's so short. The game means basically nothing to Para. The game means everything to the Dragons in terms of staying in control of making the 8. And I think the Dragons are the better team. So I don't need to elaborate on that. Let me know if you disagree. I won't elaborate on it now, but certainly when we dissect the game, I'm trying to find out what I'm really missing there, other than it's the home finale for Para. And Para's shown some fight, which I can get into, but the Dragons have got to be winning that one. It's a very low line, surprised me. And I'm going to take your Titans on Sunday to round out round 26, I should say, plus 10.5 at $1.90, TopSport and lads as well. And I think the Titans have got enough personnel to actually mix it up with the Knights. I know Bradman Best is back this week, but there's a little bit of risk in that. The Knights are without both starting second rowers. The Titans are off a couple of humbling floggings, and unlike some other sides dwelling towards the bottom 4, I actually think, and for reasons I'll get into, that the Titans need to show something in the last week or two. And this is the type of game where very few will be on them, very few would expect the Gold Coast to be in this, but I actually think it could be a really good game in the afternoon in Newcastle, where I know the Titans generally do play better in the day. You give me a double-digit line. It's not the prettiest, but I'll take that one happily.
Yeah, early indications there. I think one of them I had as a smoky for your best bets. 2 I love, and 1 I'm kind of on the fence for that game, mate. But we will break it all down game by game in just a second. Before we get to that, of course, as always, we have a clip from the CEO of TopSport. It is Mr. Tristan Merlehan with an exclusive market breakdown.
G'day everyone, it's Tristan Merlehan here from TopSport, and we're getting close to those finals. 2 weeks left of the regulation games, and we get to that tricky time of the year, which I touched on last week, where obviously a few teams starting to go out the back door, and we've seen that a little bit, unfortunately, with my Titans. It was great to see Jacob and a few of the guys up there in the TopSport lounge on the weekend. Unfortunately, the boys couldn't quite get it done, although it was tight for probably half an hour or so, but then the Roosters just flexed their muscles and showed they're going to be a force come September. Looking at the games coming up this weekend, the biggest move by some distance is the Cowboys against the Storm. Obviously, there's a stack of Storm players being rested, 11 players in total. The line's gone from 5.5 to 13.5. We obviously expected some players to be rested for the Storm, but obviously with the Panthers losing on the weekend, it did wrap up the minor premiership for Melbourne, and now they've rested a lot of their players, and the Cowboys obviously have still plenty of important games to play in the lead into the finals. The other game that's moved a little bit, we've seen a little bit of a push for all the favourites at the minus, really. The Sharks 12.5 out to 14.5 against the Warriors, and also the Knights 9.5 to 10.5. The Roosters 14.5 out to 15.5. So the punters are probably erring on that side that the good sides are really going to go another step forward over the course of the weekend. Good luck if you're having a punt over the weekend, and of course, gamble responsibly.
Boom. Great stuff there from Tristan as always. And once again, thank you to his hospitality in the TopSport lounge where he rolled out the red carpet for you and I, mate. It wasn't great. Great Sunday. Let's roll into our preview game by game. We'll kick it off with game 1 Thursday, 7:50 p.m. The Cowboys host the Storm at Queensland Country Bank Stadium. Now, this line was minus 12.5 against Cowboys. It has now shifted to minus 13.5 against them. They do welcome back Jeremiah Nanai and Jason Taumalolo, which is two key inclusions. But the real reason this line continues to move, Jerome Hughes, Harry Grant, Will Warbrick, Jack Howarth, Nick Meaney, Nelson Asafa-Solomona, Josh King, Sean Bloor, Elias Katoa, Trent Lee-Hero, and Tui Kamakamitha all out. I think it's pretty clear, Winnie, we have a line here that is moving due to the Storm resting a serious amount of players. So when you break this one down, how do you see it playing out?
Well, this is what we expected, isn't it? So I'm going to get to a point where I put my hand up and say, we could have executed a bet on this before today. When I looked at the team list, my eyes straight away did say, hang on, Pappenhausen, Munster. But you think those guys have missed significant game time this year, so maybe they are playing because they don't need a rest as much as others. However, with 5 reserves, what if Bellamy goes even further? Like, they're not playing the A team by any stretch. So how much do Pappenhausen and Munster get out of this? Versus the risk of you put them in harm's way. It's the NRL. It's a brutal sport. And, is that worth the risk? So if you back Melbourne and go, they've still got these guns, just be wary that I don't see it as a certainty. Therefore, it is a shell of a Storm team. Now, North Queensland have not won the game yet, but I do have to say what a win it is for the Cowboys to just draw the Storm this week when Melbourne occupies first position in the ladder. You get a game where it could have been one of the toughest tasks of the year, and it turns into a match where, honestly, if the Cowboys show up and get their game right, they should dominate it. That's even if Munster and Pappenhausen play. And I reckon that a year or two ago, Penrith sent the B team up in the last round or second last round as well. And I want to talk about a couple of games where the best teams in the comp have rested everybody. That Penrith game went from a look-ahead line where Penrith was like a double-digit favourite to then nobody playing for Penrith up in North Queensland, and North Queensland ending up being like a 13-point favourite. And that's over a 20-point line move, and it wasn't enough from memory. And I know we were on the Cowboys and we got on early as well. But even that week when the line had moved, I still said, still playing North Queensland. And the Cows won by at least 20 points in that one. Also think of another legendary pod moment. About 3 years ago, Melbourne said on the radio on Tuesday morning that they were resting everyone against St. George. They were still a 16.5-point favourite. So we shared it out. We backed them each and every way. Play the team total under, play the opponent's team total over, play the first half line. We've got all these lines. And that line went from Storm a 16.5 favourite to a 4.5-point underdog. So call that a 20-point swing as well. And the Dragons actually gave us a nervous start. They were down like 16-6 early, but won it by at least 10, I want to say, comfortably. So my point is that you basically can't move the line far enough in these drastic occasions. Therefore, I'm definitely not playing Storm. I'm not going to make a case for the Storm, even though historically you can say, the Storm rested players before. The Storm have been in situations where a lot of guys have been in Origin and none of them played. And you still get great performances because we know that Bellamy, if he's not the best coach in the world, he's right there. But North Queensland's off a bye. They get back Taumalolo, Nane. It's North Queensland, and they should win big. And the reason it wasn't one of my 4 best bets is principle, honestly. This line was 3.5 last week, and last week I said that the Storm were highly likely to rest in round 26 against North Queensland. The line was 9.5 yesterday. I reckon if I did a better job and if I was more switched on, I should have just said, let's play that 9.5 yesterday, where we knew for sure that Melbourne had solidified the minor prem, had taken care of business against the Finns. It's 12.5 now. And North Queensland's probably going to win 20 plus. And so if you still like the Cows, I'm not going to talk you out of it. Go and play 13 plus right now. It's $1.94 on Sportsbet was minus 12.5, right? I'm going to leave it because I take responsibility for just not pulling the trigger earlier. Although I pretty much always share my best bets at this time and I'm a bit limited to this window, I still, I blame myself, if anyone, because this one was so clear. And this is what I talk about, where you are not as limited as I am in terms of when you execute your bets as opposed to what I share as an official play. And this is one of those ones where punters can take advantage because the news was out. Although the bookies were aware and they definitely were moving preemptively, it was clearly still value. And the value's diminishing now. And you play it now, it's not a sure thing. The Cowboys line, that is. The Cows have had some mystifying games, particularly at home, some no-shows. But truthfully, I do think this is probably going to be pretty one-sided.
And I think as well, it's worth noting after the Panthers game, which was round 24, Craig Bellamy did say at that time when the minor premiership was wrapped up that, yes, we will be resting players in the future. You look at their last 2 games, Cowboys, Broncos, you could have almost guessed it's been one of those. So there was an opportunity to get an even better line at that stage if you were looking that far ahead. Interestingly enough, these sides do meet for the first time this year. And the Cowboys have won their last 2 over the Storm, and by significant margins also, far bigger than you would expect. One of them was like a 20-point victory there. But in my opinion, you throw that all out the window this game. I'm not interested in form. I'm not interested in season stats. I don't care about anything. I don't even factor the Cowboys coming off a bye in this one. I only have one factor that I consider, and that is that the Melbourne Storm have already shown their hand. And their hand is that they simply do not care about this game. It's a short turnaround from Melbourne to Townsville. There is quite literally nothing to play for. They can win by 100. They can lose by 100. They can draw after 90 minutes. It does not affect their 2024 season, regular or finals-wise, at all. Meanwhile, the Cowboys, they will recognize here that with a loss, and if Manly were to win later in the round, it takes a home final out of their own hands. You keep in mind how poor they have been at Sydney at times this year and in New South Wales compared to their form in Townsville. That's really key for them. So it doesn't rule it out, but it does take it out of their hands and make other results need to go in their favor to get that. Therefore, I have to predict the Cowboys here. I'm not quite sure at that line either. I think part of me is because I'm just hesitant to underestimate the Storm under any circumstances, just knowing Craig Bellamy and how great this football club is. So I think Cowboys will win. I'm just not sure how much.
Game 2 find out what Nicole reckons. I hit Tues last week at Juicy Odds. It was $3.50 or $4, and his tip actually is on the first of the round. Not going Jerome Hughes. Well, he can't go Jerome Hughes this week. Let's find out who he likes.
So Tommy Dearden is $3.40 to score a try anytime on 365, noticeably higher than all the other bookies. If you haven't seen it, the Storm have obviously rested quite a few of their most of their regular players. I know on our Discord there was chat going on for the last couple of weeks that they were going to rest, and I think about a day ago the line was minus 2.5 Cowboys, and now it's about 12.5, 14.5. So I hope a few of you guys got the middle, and I'm sure Dearden is a great price. Hope he gets up this weekend as well. So good luck for the weekend. Enjoy. Only 2 full rounds to go. So good luck, punt responsibly. Catch you guys soon. And as always, Google Wiki Linktree and Discord, way past 5,000 now. All our stuff is free to check out, including the Left v Right article, which has been really, really popular the last few weeks.
Good stuff from Nicole as always. And you would have seen that he called out the try-scoring value of the odds there for Tom Dearden. He would have done that via his odds comparison tool, which you pick your player, and it shows you the price that every bookie has them listed at for any time try scorer. So definitely a handy tool and available via Wiki Linktree. Final point on this game when he comes from Ryan. He says, if you do like the Storm, it would it make sense to play the first half because there's a chance Munster and Pappy come off 60 minutes in? I agree, because this game just doesn't matter. So that is definitely a risk if you like Storm, that their players do come off early as well.
Yeah, do agree with that. And in general, I like an underdog, a big underdog first half, maybe keep it close. And then the Cowboys could be that team that overwhelms you late as well. And Ryan says, or inverse. If you're not sure about laying 12.5 for the game, you could lay 6.5 second half with Cows. And if they're up big at half time, you're still going to feel like you've got a pretty good bet in your pocket. Like Jeff says, what about the young players for Storm? Look, that's why there are no sure things. And now that line's adjusted, like, there's hungry players in the Storm. There's guys who are fringe who want to say, hey, I want to be in the 17 for the finals. This is a team that win a premiership. And then you're going to see, again, Munster, Pappenhausen, Farlongo, Wishart. You're going to see some handy players out there that if they all have their moments, it could get interesting. And I'm kind of hoping that happens now, because I didn't have a best bet on the Cowboys. But I have to call it how I see it. And if the Cowboys are the real deal, they should be winning this comfortably. And if the Cowboys can't win this one, how are they going to beat anyone in the finals?
Exactly right, mate. Game 2 is Friday, 6 p.m, where the Bulldogs host Manly. We're at a core stadium. Line was set at -3.5 against the Doggies. That's moved slightly to -4.5. They will shift Jacob Carraz to centre and bring Jarrell Skelton onto the wing. That's because Stephen Crichton is out, as is Kurt Mann, but they do welcome back Josh Curran there. For Manly, Tommy Talau's back in the centre, so that shifts Tolu Kola to the bench, and Matt Lodge returns for them. And I didn't actually notice this, but on the recap show 24 hours ago, I used these two sides as an example. I said that I would have tipped Manly before, but now if they played, I'd have to go the Doggies. I did not realize that was literally the next game. So I've already revealed my tip on this game, mate. But you think that the Seagulls can do a strong job in the first half at least?
Yeah, I've revealed mine because I shared the best bets at the start of the show. Now, I've private messaged you our show stats. I think you may have forgot to put in your screen name. If you want to chuck that in, you can. Just, I know people appreciate it. And I'm saying that after a really bad week. But, there's nothing to hide. We're as transparent as we possibly can be. And I do like Manly this week. And I think it's a great game. The schedule makers have mucked up and given us the wrong game early on Friday night. Although for old people like me, I don't mind an awesome game at 6 p.m. on a Friday night. Crichton suspended, so thank you, NRL. He knocked out RTS for the rest of the season. But why should New Zealand benefit in any way? I'd much rather see Manly be rewarded by they're not the ones that have to face one of the biggest stars in the game. That makes a lot more sense. We'll still get Crichton for what he did wrong. And yes, it completely sank and gutted the Warriors and their chance to cover the line late. But don't worry about that. Everybody makes mistakes, right? From a neutral perspective, Critter out, as much as you always want to see the superstars, I will say it makes it a more intriguing clash because it does bring the teams closer together. You said it, Clarkey. The line was 3.5 earlier today. Now team lists are out. Why has it gone to 4.5? Tell me if you know, or tell me in the comments. What was the surprise, or why have people gone, I've got to lay the 3.5 with the Dogs? Is it just because they're covering the line every week? Because there was no surprise news, I wouldn't say, unless it's like Curran back on the bench. But as great as the Dogs were, they were excellent, overcoming the occasion and deficit in Auckland. And then Manly was the opposite. Didn't have full focus, jump out to a big lead, and you can't even beat the Tigers. Now, the Dogs come in, and because they've kept winning, continue to have a sniff at top 4, though it's unlikely because I can't see Penrith dropping a game to end the year. And the Dogs' points differentials probably not even good enough that if they catch Cronulla or the Roosters that they'd overtake them on the ladder. But you still got a chance if you're the Dogs. Manly's booked their finals ticket thanks to the Finns losing, but Manly still wants to open the finals at Brookie, and that's going to require probably winning the next 2 weeks. Of course, you're going to tell everyone Canterbury's 10-0 at home, which is just ridiculous. And I am going against that if I'm taking a start with the away team. But to me, it's an away game. Yeah, the crowd will be raucous, but it's a Sydney game. I don't think that's a bad spot for Manly. You get a long turnaround, and I'm going to call Manly a good team off a bad loss. I know people will say the Dogs are just going so well that it doesn't matter that Crichton's not playing. Look at Brisbane. Fair example. But they're still such a great team in attack and defense with Crichton there. He elevates them on both sides of the ball, and he is an inspirational leader. So don't tell me him being there it doesn't make a big difference. Just look at Penrith a week ago without Cleary. You can say other players can step up, but you still would rather have that superstar there. So I'll be happy to not face him. I'll be happy to be betting on Tommy Turbo. Dare I say it, looking, a little bit like 2020 Turbo. Trying his best to pull his team back from the brink last week. You've got the halves battle, I think, is pretty even. Birdo's got an awesome kicking game, but DCE's that crafty. Some other guys in the Manly pack coming in recently that make this more even. Like, you got to remember, Croker was out for a lot of the year, but has been back a couple of weeks. Olakuatu gets suspended without even playing that Origin game, but he's been back a couple of weeks. Some fellas in the Dogs pack are having outstanding years, like career years, really. Marnie, King, Preston. To me, it's pretty even. I don't see a lot between these sides. So home advantage for sure. The Dogs should be favourites. 4.5 feels a little much to me, and I'm going to take 2.5 because I feel it may be slightly stronger. One of the most impressive things about the Dogs has actually been how their defence just never goes away, and they've kept teams to such low totals in second halves. Well, I don't have to worry about the second half here. And there's also just that asymmetric risk that, all right, the line's at 4.5 now, which correlates to a 2.5 first half. Okay, if the little money comes from Manly, if that line goes down at all, even half a point, you might not get 2.5 first half anymore. But if I'm wrong and Manly comes for the Dogs, you're still never going to get a first half line better than 2.5. Because for the first half line to get to a key number, which the next one is 4, the line would have to get to 8+. It's not going to. So I take the 2.5, and you won't have a bad bet. And hey, if a bit of money comes from Manly, or I feel like we haven't had any shocking omissions recently. I feel like it was more at the start of the year. There'd be these out of the blue omissions always against me, but you never know. A random player's out. You just never know. It could go through a key number and you could be sitting with a great bet. And I think it is a really solid bet in its own right. And it's funny because I have rated the Dogs higher than Manly all season long, but I do feel like, unfortunately, everyone's caught up on Canterbury at this point, how good they are. So I don't see great value represented in their line, though they've still been covering most weeks. And if you're asking me head-to-head and you're there or thereabouts in your tipping comp, absolutely a good upset pick if you're looking for one. And I'll be bold and actually say Manly wins this if you just want to know my head-to-head pick. But my best bet, first half plus 2.5.
Well, everyone knows my pick here is the Bulldogs from our recap show if you were there. And that's predominantly based on their 80-minute consistent performances for a number of games now. Now, I'm still not convinced that their style that they play with is enough to beat the Elite Two in the Panthers and the Storm. But in reality, I look at Manly last round, and we had a Tigers side who made it tough for them, and they faded out of the contest with poor discipline. And without Tom Trbojevic, I believe that scoreline would have been much, much different. But we know that the Bulldogs do that. They make it hard for their opposition, and they do make it a dogfight in most of the games, and they come out on top. Now, Manly have won their last 2 in a row over the Bulldogs. Those games were in 2023. This is the first time we see them meet this year, and it is a new and improved Bulldogs side, so I am very, very interested in that. Historically, these sides have met 42 times throughout NRL history, and they both have 21 wins apiece. So the win here actually goes ahead on the all-time wins-losses, which is not of any significance, but it is just an interesting stat to note. The Bulldogs, they're at home. We know how strong they are at home this year. And across this entire season, they are only conceding 16 points on average per game. That is in itself is incredible. But if we look at their last 5 only, that number drops to 14. So their defense is certainly on. What does make this game so exciting, though, is Manly's dynamic attack. Did I just drop out there, Winnie?
I feel like you possibly did for a second, but I can still hear you.
Yeah, and I can't see my camera on, which is strange. Hopefully that loads back in a second. My apologies, guys. In their
Keep talking and then see what you can do.
Good stuff. Yeah, sorry, mate. In their last 5 games, the Seagulls are averaging 33 points per game, and that's above their season average, which is 26. So we have 2 sides that are above their season averages in the past 5 games. So I do view this as a bit of a game where we have the fire in Manly's attack meeting the ice of the Bulldogs' defense, and I think that they are both where they need to be in respect to their respective art and what makes them a strong side. I will take the Bulldogs as my prediction, as I revealed on the recap show, but it's only slightly. I could see this being a really tight contest. So either side 1-12 is a way that I would consider playing this one as well. Alrighty, I will read out game 3, mate, and then look at this camera. Game 3, Friday, 8 p.m. Panthers host the Rabbitohs at Bluebet Stadium. The line was set at -16.5 against the Panthers. It has now moved to -17.5. They will welcome back Sunia Taruva and Paul Alamotti. Meanwhile, Casey McLean and Dane Laurie are out. Mitch Kenny, their hooker, is also back. For the Bunnies, they welcome back their halfback, Cody Walker. Winnie, you know what they say. The Panthers don't lose 2 in a row. Well, they have. Losing 3 in a row from this point does seem highly unlikely, though, against the Rabbitohs. No doubt you're seeing this in similar fashion.
Sure am. I'm nervous to do this, but I'll put myself on full screen. And Clarkey, I can still see you in the virtual studio. You wave at me when you are back. The lesser game is the primetime game, as I said, but we will still have a best bet on it, and it will be fun if Penrith takes care of business here. I can't see Penrith possibly losing 3 in a row, and neither can Clarkey, who's back now in full grace and with a moving camera again. So I'm going Penrith win both halves, $1.85 on Dabble, as I said. One of the reasons is I do view Souths as a dead team, though getting Cody Walker back gives you a little bit more life. Penrith gets Taruva in again, as I called for, Kenny as well. Penrith needs to win. Let's start there. Because if Penrith lose another game this year, the Dogs could actually pip Penrith for top 4. As inconceivable as that would have been, Penrith could miss the 4. However, Penrith's not losing. I think Penrith have got Titans next week as well, right? And they're just not going to lose because they're not going to lose 3 games in a row. They're too good. And after a couple of subpar results and coming back home, I'm sure I'm stating something that everyone agrees that Penrith will bang up for this one. On paper, you might look at Souths and say, oh, they can compete. I will say the South starting pack looks like they can mix it with Penrith, but that's assuming that the Rabbitohs are mentally up for this, which I'm just not sure is a certainty because the Rabbitohs season ended weeks ago. So I think Penrith's going to win by plenty. I want to say well done to those. I saw multiple people in the TryPod group tip it when the line was around 13 and laid the points with Penrith. Now it's 17.5, but I still found a way to play it that I like, which is win both halves. And the line would have to get a fair bit higher before I could even consider the Rabbitohs. Look at some of these in the back line. Edwards, Taruva, Tungo, To'o. Up against Souths, Gray, Munro, Milne, Myers. The experience there and ability is pretty telling and should be well and truly the difference.
Mate, I see this one pretty much the same. Panthers have won 11 of their last 13 over the Rabbitohs. Keep in mind, one of those losses was a shock loss in week 1 of the finals, and then they corrected that with revenge in the grand final. The Rabbitohs have also not beaten the Panthers at Bluebet Stadium in over 5 years. I think when you look at those stats in particular, you factor in Penrith are coming off 2 losses in a row. It is a really good spot for them to return home here. I can see this being a really dominant display for that reason. But then I look across the fence to the Bunnies, and I just believe they're cooked. They have been for some time now. Like, really, the only life their season had was that short 5-game winning streak they put together. Even with the sin bin last week, Cameron Murray still led their forwards for meters and tackles. What's worse is he almost led the entire side for meters. The only player that had more was Tane Milne with 1 more meter. So the energy and effort from this Rabbitohs side from most players is all but gone. I think when you factor both of those things together, my prediction is the same as yours. I actually did land on Penrith to win both halves as my prediction. I can just see an 80-minute performance from the Panthers. I think it's been, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe it's actually been a bit longer than that, Winnie, since we've seen a true 80-minute performance from the Panthers. But with finals around the corner, we know they are more than classy enough, and we've seen some sides with much less class put the Bunnies away this year. So Panthers to win both halves is my prediction as well.
I want to address some comments. So I think I understand the question there. Keegan saying, devil's advocate, if the Dogs lose, then do the Panthers take the foot off the gas? So I said Penrith's got to win to stay top 4. If the Dogs lose, it removes that threat. But as Ryan points out, that's not all that Penrith's playing for. Penrith still wants to keep winning and get back to second or third because then you don't have to go to Melbourne in week 1. So There's multiple reasons, along with the fact that Penrith's just, got an attitude and don't want to get beaten by 3 in a row, even if there was nothing to play for. They want to correct their form at this time of the season.
Not to mention Penrith have a really tough task ahead of them in round 27 against the Gold Coast Titans. Let's move on to game 4, mate. It's at Saturday, 3 p.m, where the Eels host the Dragons at CommBank Stadium. The line was set at -2.5 against the Dragons. That has shifted to -3.5. They do welcome back Raymond Faitala-Mariner on the bench. He was great in reserve grade last week, pardon myself. For the Eels, Luca Moretti joins their bench. Jake Tungo out, so just adding a bit of forward beef there. All right, Winnie, we know the trend of the season for the Dragons so far. This game lands on a win in that trend for them. The Eels did show some fight last week, but it was very brief, mate. So you've got the Dragons here. I tend to agree. How do you break it down, though?
Yeah, I posed the question at the start of the show, so I'll give you another chance. Is anyone back in Para in this game? I did see a comment. Someone said Para's fighting to avoid the wooden spoon, but let's start there. Of course they are, but this game cannot impact whether Para finishes 16th or 17th. Whether they win or lose, the loser of Tigers Eels in round 27 will finish last. So to me, I know I expected a bit more out of the Titans last week. I saw a big performance coming by the Raiders last week, and the reasons I gave, home finale, which is the case for Para. So I've got to say that could be something. You're playing in front of your members. But tell me, are there any Para fans in the chat? Like, even if you're an Eels fan and you've got tickets to this game, you'd probably give up the win if you knew you could win next week and avoid the spoon, wouldn't you? So it goes to show the game is much more important for Parramatta next week, less so this week. But for St. George, they've got to win. St. George has 3 teams nipping at their heels, and you know that someone's going to win out of Broncos Dolphins, which we'll preview next. And the Knights are $1.30 favourites to win as well. So Dragons might not even control their destiny, as good as they've been thus far, not last week, but every second week, which has been enough to put the Dragons in 8th. And they'd absolutely want to take advantage of that and make sure they stamp a finals ticket. That's why I was surprised by this line, because all year, the Dragons have been a better team than Para. And certainly at this point in time with the only Origin players, Moses, Hopgood, they're not even available for Parramatta. So what am I missing here? Now, maybe I am missing something. I've gone against Para the last 4 weeks because this is how I feel. And I think we have won 2 out of those 3. I mean, I got lucky. I went against Para with Penrith, but I took the team total over. Then we got a very comfortable win with the Roosters against Para. Then I did play Brisbane against Para last week and failed to cover the line, but, it was narrow. You could say that Para are proving that they are producing pockets of effort, and so maybe Para will put up a good effort here as well. But I know what I'm going to get out of St. George, and the yo-yo factor is so well publicized. I actually don't love that because I think everybody probably thinks the same way, but it's not a coincidence either. The Dragons do get up more after they get their butts kind of kicked into gear. So I'll take the better team that understands the importance of the game against a side that's not very good and in a look-ahead spot. I thought this line was going to be above 6. It's 2.5 or 3.5, which is virtually the same thing. So best bet, of course, I'm going to say later 2.5. But either way, I think this is a line that's going to climb. If you've got a different opinion, I'm all ears.
And when we are seeing this through the same lens, look, I don't want to overthink or overcomplicate this one at all. Now, the pressure is definitely turned up for the Dragons. But let me give you guys an example. Let's say we're at a roulette wheel, and it's essentially been red or black, on and off, whichever color you pick for win or loss, and there's 2 greens mixed in that trend. Those 2 greens would be the Tigers, where it managed to be something other than changing every single time. You can't tell me you're backing the win color for the 26th time in that trend. Everyone in the world would. Like, you'd be crazy to go against it. Now, the 26th spin in this instance is, of course, round 26, and whichever color you chose for your win, being red or black, is a win for the Dragons with that trend. Additionally, they have won 7 of their last 8 games against bottom 8 opposition, and the Eels very much fall into that category. The Eels have lost their last 4 games in a row at home, so I don't believe it represents some great fortress that the Dragons will struggle at there. This is actually the first time these sides are meeting this year, so there is no Pride 2024 meeting to factor in here. But if we go by their season averages, both score around 20 points per game, but the Eels do concede roughly 4 more at 29 points per game. Now, the reason I bring up that number of 29 points conceded per game for the Eels is they are a bottom 8 side. So I went back and had a look. For the Dragons, against bottom 8 opposition in their last 5 games, they have averaged 34 points. Now, I always love seeing that when I can see a side averaging more points scored than the team that is conceding them, particularly when the team is a bottom 8 side here in the Eels. Not only that, we saw the Eels fall away last round horribly to the Broncos. I can see Aluda on YouTube says, I honestly like the Eels because power attack is hot. And I agree. Only if you turned it off after the first 11 minutes. From that point, their attack really went out the window. It got clunky. They went into their shell. And I think they are susceptible to concede points at any time. So for that reason, I will be playing the Dragons at the line here with great confidence. It is leg 1 of Clarkey's collect, with the next leg to be revealed later. For a try scorer, if you're looking at anyone here, Winnie, I went to Mike Acevo. He requires just 1 try to hit a century mark of 100 in the NRL, and the Dragons did concede 2 tries to a left winger last round, being Sam Stonestreet, which just came off simple shifts. So I think Sevo is a great chance to bring up his 100 in this game.
And let me address the comments. So Anthony says Eels win will avoid the spoon because their percentage is better than Tigers. You mean plus minus? What you're missing there, Anthony, is that the Tigers are on the bye. So the Tigers are getting 2 points. So points differential won't matter because if the Eels win, they'd be on equal points, and then the winner next week avoids the spoon. If the Eels lose, that superior plus minus is the reason that a win in round 27 will avoid the spoon. Hopefully that explains it. And as we were talking, I checked Toppy again. Wouldn't you know it? Now the line's 4.5. Still 3.5 in other places, but I suggest it should go that way because I just don't know who out there is going, yes, Eels plus 3.5 is an awesome bet this weekend. Keegan says 1 night at the casino, and Clarkey's dropping roulette analogies. And, I think differently to Clarkey, so I'm going to push back and say, if a roulette wheel is going black, red, every spin is independent. So I've got no issue fading that trend. But with a footy team that has, real human beings and has a real personality, it's not, as you said in the recap, Clarkey, it's not just a coincidence. It is the personality of this Dragons team that they have a good win, then they seem to read their press clippings and then they relax. And then, we got pumped. Now we've got to redeem ourselves. We've got to play better. And that was a real kick up the backside to get humbled at home by 28 points or so against Cronulla. And understanding there's plenty of teams that would love to take St. George's spot. And it's a great opportunity to play an Eels side that's very depleted with nothing to play for. You got to go and win this one, St. George. And so for the sake of the best bet, I certainly hope they do.
And Keegan is right there. 1 night at the casino, just in the case that my wife's watching this show right now, that was my official debut. I'd never been before until you twisted my arm. You really did. Game 5 is Saturday, 5:30 p.m. Dolphins host the Broncos. We're at Suncorp Stadium. Line was set at -6.5 against Broncos. That didn't change at all when I checked pre-game. Kobe Hetherington out for them. Benjamin Takura in. For the Dolphins, Sean O'Sullivan into the halves. Cody Nikorima out. Jesse Bromwich out of the front row. Mark Nichols starts there. And Kurt Donahue and the other player is escaping my mind. It'll come to me later. Both joined the bench. And we are back for the Battle of Brisbane here for another installment. Both sides are missing plenty of players here, but there is a lot to play for both sides, Winnie. So with that in mind, are you with your Finns, or do you think the Broncos will get the job done here?
You thinking of Oren Keeley?
Mason Teague.
Mason Teague.
I wrote Wilton in my notes, but I meant Mason Teague. Oops.
Yeah, so you got the Teague part, right? Of course. Am I backing the Finns? Let me get to that. It's awesome timing. We get the Battle of Brisbane. 2 teams that actually, everyone, including myself, at some point in the last few weeks has said their season's over. They're not making the 8. But the truth is they both have, Broncos and Dolphins, have viable pathways to the finals and will remain alive in round 27 if they win here, while the loser of this game will have their hopes and dreams dashed. It's sad for me from a Finns perspective to see Jay Brom out. Tavita Pangai Jr. is in the reserves, but perhaps not ready. I saw you posted about that. Nikorima's out, though. O'Sullivan's a good replacement. But what's the story with Plath? Let me throw back to you, Clark. Did I not see that Plath's injured?
So they did name him, but of course, Jerry Marshall-King is in the reserves. So if his cup is touch and go and JMK is good to go, they could swap them on game day.
Sure, but ideally you want them both. Like whether JMK is good to go or not, to beat Brisbane, I want Plath and Marshall-King out there. So at least it's a slight positive that Marshall-King could be back. Though when you see a really important player back from an injury layoff, you always think, well, there's a fair chance they're underdone just because of the importance of the occasion. You might have to roll the dice. And then when you look at the reserves, you also see Payne Haas conspicuously there on the reserves bench for Brisbane. What a monumental inclusion that would be. And that's probably why this line was 5.5 yesterday, but now 6.5. No Walsh or Mann, but there's still plenty of game breakers for the Finns with the likes of Stags, Cobbo, Mariner. The Dolphins are first on the fixture sheet, but of course we know this game's at Suncorp and Bennett's men are yet to win against Big Brother from 3 attempts so far, though we also know this is the one that the Dolphins want the most. Of course, it's important for both sides because Brisbane wants to maintain that dominance and remain the alpha and also remind everyone whose home ground it really is. Unfortunately, just like last year, the Dolphins' depth has been stretched and it also feels like the energy levels have depleted. We've seen it in the late season results now, both seasons. In this game, in terms of who wins, Reynolds has got a lifetime of experience over Katoa, and I can't help but notice that game management is an issue for the Finns, especially late game, and it probably has cost some close wins that could be the difference about whether Redcliffe makes the 8 or not. I also think Brisbane's pack has more meters in them too, and that's especially frightening if worst case scenario, there's no TPJ, but there is a Payne Haas, it's even more lopsided. So I did think the line was a little light when it was 5.5 yesterday, but now it's 6.5 or 7.5. I'm kind of glad because I'm not going to play Brisbane. I'll pass the game, and I do think the Dolphins have a chance to win. I think Bennett, we know he's leaving. This might be his second last game, might be his last game in Brisbane. Does he have that final ace up the sleeve? He's done it before against the odds. You got the hammer there. With no Reece Walsh lining up against him, as good as Sailor is, like Hammer has put his stamp on Origin, which is the highest level of the sport. So in a big game, can the Hammer have a match-winning performance? I think he really can. And I'm also looking at Herbie, who hasn't had the best year and missed the first encounter with his old club, but also can be a match winner if he's at his best. So with the line now above a converted try, the big question mark is, can the Dolphins hold up in the second half? Because consistently they've fallen away later in games. So if you take the line, that's what you're most concerned with. But if there was ever a game where my boys could dig deep and fight till the bitter end, it would be against Big Brother. So no bet from me, but I do have a bit of belief that the upset is not out of reach and this should be a beauty.
And it's worth noting as well, these sides have versed in the past where the Dolphins had significant injuries and they still put in a great shift. But when I look at these two sides, Winnie, my mind straight away goes to they were both unimpressive last round. I know one won and one got absolutely hammered, but by the Broncos stand, if they want to be a final side, I thought their execution was well off on both sides of the ball against the Eels there. But this is a contest and a spot where they don't have to find that extra motivation. It just comes naturally. It's a rivalry game at a stadium they both share, and a potential spot in the 8 is alive for the winner. Genuinely, when we talk round 26, this could be one of the biggest meetings with the most importance of all time during NRL history. Obviously, I don't remember back to the ladder however many, but certainly in recent history, it feels that way. Now, the Dolphins do remain 0-3 against the Broncos. They are yet to record a victory, and I think that could be used as motivation for either side. If you're the Dolphins, you really want to win. If you're the Broncos, you say, hey, let's keep it rolling. Both sides have 10 wins and 12 losses this season. Can't split them there. Both sides average almost identical season averages in terms of points scored and points conceded. In fact, I'm looking at the ladder now, and only 29 points across the 25 games so far. Not 25, it'll be slightly less. 22 games, let's call it, for each. So almost just more than 1 point a game separates them. When you go to the ladder, depending on who you view as the true home side here, both sides are 5-6 at home this year. And when you go to their away records, it says they're 5-6 also. So again, you cannot get a split there. So the only thing I can do here is, who does this game mean more to? That's the only key factor of where I'm going to separate these sides. and that is purely opinion. But my opinion is I lean to the Broncos. I do think in the back of the players' minds, there is kind of that revenge burning where they've been written off all year. They've been hammered in the media. They've been told their season is over time and time again. And they do know if we can get through this game and get a win, we don't know what kind of side the Storm are going to roll out in the final round. They might also be boosted in that game by the return of Reece Walsh and Payne Haas. So certainly a lot to play for there. I also just feel a part of me thinks the Dolphins are cooked. Now, they have conceded 150 points in their last 4 games. They have looked very tired and faded out of contest, as it was noted in the comments there. I keep kind of predicting them to flip that switch and show that early season form. And it's just been a little bit too long since we've seen it now. So I will lean with the Broncos as my tip in this one. But I'm certainly keen for this game from a fan perspective. I think it should be a great contest. Alrighty, mate. Game 6 is at Saturday, 7:35 p.m. where the Sharks host the Warriors at PointsBet Stadium. Line was minus 13.5 against the Sharkies. It's moved slightly to 14.5 there. They welcome back Sione Katoa. However, Jesse Ramian is out, so Siosifa Talakai moves into the centres there. For the Warriors, Tane Tuapiki is their new fullback. Chance Nickel Klukstar moves to centre. That's because RTS is out, and Ali Liatawa comes in on the other centre. I look at this game, Winnie, and this didn't jump out at me right away, but it's a nice touch for Sean Johnson because it's not only his final NRL game, but it's at another ground that's familiar to him with his previous club being the Sharkies. So when you break this one down, how do you see it playing out for SJ's Warriors in their final game against a tough tops 4 side in the Sharkies?
I mean, it would have been a nice touch for Sean Johnson if his teammates had a fair dinkum dig, had a crack, because they were pretty poor, the Warriors. I know I'm crying about the bunker, but from 12-0 up, the Warriors were dominated, which just shouldn't be the case. Out-mount smart. I know how good the Dogs are, but it's a lost year for New Zealand. They've failed. The Warriors have failed to live up to the hype or sense of occasion in the big games this year. And now this isn't really as big of a game. I mean, yeah, you want to send Sean Johnson out the right way, but if you play well this week, I can't help but think, where was it last week? You know, it's just been sad, and it's sad to me that I wish RTS joined the Warriors last year when they really were on fire. They somehow said, "Oh, we don't want to disrupt what we've got," but now RTS joined a team that was more of your typical Warriors, and it hasn't been such happy returns. And now he's out for the season, the season ends this week for the Warriors. And Nickel Klukstar moves to centre, Tuapiki in at fullback, as you said. What else can you say about New Zealand? They've had probably just enough ambushes this year that they have been a bit of a tipster's nightmare. And I don't think I've been profitable on Warriors games because I haven't picked out when they'll be at their best, which could mean that the Warriors surprise people here. As for Cronulla, they absolutely want to win. As we've said before, the Sharks are above Penrith. That's where you want to stay. You stay above Penrith, you'll be playing week 1 of the finals in Sydney no matter what, which is definitely better than the alternative. The Sharks have also navigated a very tricky part of the season where they had both halves out at times and still holding on to top 4, or in fact top 3. And Nico is in the reserves. It's worth noting. This wouldn't be a bad game to work Nico back into the team, and even if it was just for a period. But also, it's a type of game where Cronulla should win it either way, so they don't have to rush Nico back. And Atkinson's played awesome and alongside Trindle recently. So I like Cronulla. I would lay the points. I do see the Sharks most likely cruising, but it's one of those games where there's no real discount playing the Sharkies. Maybe the Sharks were a little under the radar a month ago, but since then it's like that 44-0 win against the Titans where they were underdogs, and even last week a very slight favourite, but they win convincingly at St George. So whereas as for the Warriors, do you know how many games they've won since round 15? Do you want to say it?
I've got it in mind. The last time the Warriors beat a side not named the Tigers was round 17 against the Broncos.
Yeah, and even in round 17, it was a Broncos team that rested their origin players and was spiraling at the time. So the Warriors haven't really beaten anyone of significance since like early June. And so, but for that reason, not many punters are on the Warriors either, which is why you get no favours with a large line. And I'll just go back to the fact that it would be typical Warriors to make this a good game. I'm not predicting that, But because the line's probably moved a little further than I would have liked, I'm passing on Cronulla.
This game is just like last week for me, Winnie, where the obvious tip on form and stats is the Sharks, and that's not up for debates. But the spanner in the works is last week it was Shaun Johnson's last game in New Zealand. Now it's his final NRL game against some of his old teammates as well. And certainly, fans or Sharks fans that will at least appreciate him in his final game there. That's what holds me back and complicates this meeting. Now, these sides have met this year, but it was round one. So for me, it is tough to gauge and take too much from that meeting. Sides are very different at these different ends of the year. The Sharks have won 7 of their 9 games at home this year, so a nice advantage to them there. And as I said, it has been almost 2 months it has been over 2 months by the time this game kicks off that the Warriors have not beaten anyone but the Tigers in the NRL. A 2-month dry spell, not including the Tigers. Meanwhile, the Sharkies, they're on a 4-game winning streak, and they look to be in as good as form as ever, really. Like, this side looks just as dangerous right now as it did with Nico Hines earlier in the season, I believe. They concede just 17 points on average per game. And I just feel like this season in particular, the Warriors attack has gotten a little bit predictable under Shaun Johnson. And I think that's why they have looked more dangerous at the times they do play Te Maire Martin there in the halfback. So I will predict Sharks here. I believe they will win, but I am nervous against a Warriors side that truly has nothing to lose and everything to gain, with multiple players playing their last game in a Warriors jersey, such as Jazz Tavanga, such as Shaun Johnson, and Adam Fanua-Blake, who is joining this side next year. So he's going to have a huge game as well. I don't know, mate. Part of me really wants to see the Warriors turn up here, but I don't want to be guided by my heart of what I want to see and just completely disregard all the stats that I just put out there. I'm probably going to stay off this game, but I could only play the Warriors. You couldn't convince me to take Sharks at that line. I think it's too big of a risk, the Warriors being motivated and coming in with nothing to play for and just playing the footy we know they're capable of. But for one reason or another, they haven't done it consistently this year.
Well, let me say then that this is the type of game that I would say is a high variance. So if you think the Warriors are a chance, back them to have a little bit on them to win, because they really do show up and play their best and try and send Johnson out, then it could last for 80 minutes. And it would be like the Warriors. They've been able to do it before when you don't predict it. But if they no-show, Cronulla's pretty ruthless, especially at home. And so alternatively, move the line another 15 points in that direction and back a Sharkies 30-plus type result. It's not going to feel silly at all if the Sharkies, are up 3 or 4 tries early.
Absolutely, mate. Game 7 is at Sunday, 2 p.m, where the Knights host the Titans at McDonald Jones Stadium. Line was against the Knights at -9.5. It's now moved slightly to 10.5. They do welcome back Bradman Best, so Dylan Lucas moves into the back row. Tyson Frizzell and Kai Pearce-Paul are out for the Knights. For the Titans, just the one change. Philip Sami comes into the centres with AJ Brimson out. When I look at this one, Winnie, and as a Titans fan, I know this better than anyone, we have historically struggled in Newcastle, and the Knights do have plenty to play for with their current ladder standing, but you are going to back my boys in and give them a chance in this one, mate, and I love it. Break it down for us and tell us why.
I do give you a chance. I'm sorry, for whatever reason, the graphic didn't upload. So 10.5 is still 9.5 in some places. Knights favoured at home over the Titans. So I just put a Titans logo there because the best bet is the Titans plus 10.5. Of course, the Knights are the ones who must win to make the finals. Not to make it, but to stay alive, to take their season into round 27. And the Knights did everything right against Souths after such a deflating loss. So that was important. The Newcastle dusted themselves off, got a comprehensive win. Now the Knights get the huge boost of Bradman Best returning. However, hamstring is a tricky injury. For one, it's such an important game, so they're probably bringing him back as soon as they possibly can. 2, you've got to question conditioning when a guy's had the hamstring tear. And Best is that type of player. He's at his best when he's going 100 miles an hour and playing explosively. So there's risk associated with that, along with the fact that the Knights don't have their pair of starting back rowers, which is a shame, because especially Pearce-Paul's had a great season and Frizzell's such an experienced player. The Titans stunk it up, and I was there in person to smell it with you on Sunday. Still a capable team of being pesky, though, I have to say. It's one thing when you drop your bundle against a Roosters team that's so powerful and so talented. This Knights side is not quite on that level. And I look at the Gold Coast as a team that still needs to prove something. They're 13th, and I don't think they can climb to 12th. But you're going to finish, you being the Titans, are going to finish 13th or 14th. You've just been flogged the last 2 weeks. Is it acceptable to just meander through the next couple of games, get flogged in them as well, and say, oh, we came 14th, but we had a few injuries? You knifed Holbrook and you brought Des in and you expected to see some improvement. And I think the Titans get up for this one. And I just want to explain that I don't believe I'm contradicting myself in the way I talk about some of these bottom sides. Like, I don't want to play Para, and I haven't the last few weeks. I don't want to play Souths. I really don't. I don't want to play New Zealand, other than last week, which was the special, the outlier occasion. And you might say, well, the Titans are in the same part of the ladder. But for me, there is a difference. The coach is in for the long haul, which is not the case for Para or Souths. And the expectations were a lot higher for those other sides, Eels, Rabbitohs, Warriors, that weren't so much for the Titans. So I don't think there's as big of a give-up factor at this point. I actually think there's a need for people to prove themselves and for this team to do something. And I also just know that the rest of the regular season is still going to pack a few surprises. This has the feeling to me of being a good candidate, and I think I'm taking a side I know will be unpopular, and that's why that line is a little bit higher, because it's so logical to take Knights at home in a must-win. But once that line gets to double digits, I'm grabbing it.
Mate, and one thing to note as well is a lot of teams this year have beat the Rabbitohs by a big margin and then fallen off the next week because it's given them that false confidence. That was happening all the way back in like round 9 or 10, and it has still continued to happen throughout the season. But I look at this one, Winnie, for the Knights, and I think this obviously looms as a very winnable game for them if we're going off stats and odds. They then play the Dolphins at home again for Old Boys Day in the final round. So if the Dolphins lose earlier this round to the Broncos, their season's dead. Whereas the Knights will actually really like their chances of playing finals from that point. Now, these two sides did meet in Magic Round earlier this year, and the Knights won that occasion by 4 points. But, of course, they were missing Kalen Ponga, and additionally, the Titans were in that kind of purple patch of form where they haven't been able to recapture that consistently since. The Knights have won 4 of their last 5 over the Gold Coast Titans. That last loss was at Cbus Super Stadium, of course, and at home, they have beaten the Titans every single time for the past 8 years. So it's been a long time since we've been able to get them at home there. But I suppose the obvious danger here for the Knights is they do score the least amount of points of any side in this competition, and a daytime track does suit the Titans. They can still score points. I don't think anyone's ever looked at this Titans side this year and said, oh, they struggle to score points, and that's why they're so poor. It's always been question marks around their defense, and when they got their defense right, that's when they had that nice little period, right? So there is danger there for the Knights. As I understand it as well, Des Hasler and Kieran Foran really did challenge the Titans at halftime and then again at full-time last week. And it was a really strong stance about the performance they put out against the Roosters and the weeks previous to that. So I'm going to predict Titans at the line as well. I do favor the Knights if you want to know a winner here. But I'm factoring in there is a chance the Titans really do score a bunch of points in daytime conditions, and that spray from Des and Kieran Foran really gets through and gets to a team that has nothing to lose but playing for pride. And I think that's really important under a coach like Des Hasler. All right,
now,
final.
Cole does comment that he's not as confident in his Titans, but he wants AKP to get over the line for leading try scorer. Mate, we were there cheering him on and outscoring Dom Young by 2 tries head-to-head, 3-1, and having that lead by 4 tries in the top try scorer standings. I believe it's 23, plays 19, plays, I don't know, Felt might be on 18. I think it's a wrap. I don't want to curse AKP, but I think it's a wrap, and you'll find the top try scorer odds now are like $1.10, where a week ago they were as high as $1.70 on Loffy. So hopefully that we don't need that. And I also just looked ahead to the draw in round 27. Knights Dolphins is the final game of the season, but it will only be for a spot in the 8 if the Dragons have lost prior. And I'm tipping the Dragons don't lose this week, but Dragons play Raiders Saturday next week next week, like in 10 days or whatever. Obviously not showing my hand, but it would be pretty exciting if the Raiders won that game, just in terms of giving us finals a week early.
That would be awesome. And then we'd be here 15 minutes after that game to recap it all, which would be great to discuss that with everyone. We're just going to tick over that hour mark, guys, so stay with us for the final game of this round. It's Game 8, Sunday, 4 p.m. Roosters host the Raiders at Allianz Stadium. The line was minus 14.5 against the Roosters. It's now minus 15.5. They do welcome back Connor Watson and Brandon Smith. However, Jared Waerea-Hargreaves and Joseph Suaalii are out. That puts Michael Jennings into the centres and Nafoa White joins their bench. For the Raiders, no changes at all. Now, we did see this game in daytime conditions earlier this year in Canberra. We were both on the Roosters as the best bet there. And I think that it was it was a fantastic win for them. Let's leave it at that. Meanwhile, the Raiders here, they are coming off the biggest win of their season, beating the Penrith Panthers there. So I did want to ask you, how close did you come to putting the Roosters at the line as a best bet here? And ultimately, what just turned you off?
Yep, happy to answer that because I was close. And that's right. We won our best bet. Roosters won by 20 plus. We even won Winnie's Kitchen on that day. We had Radley for a try and he scored, I think, 3 minutes in.
Yep.
I'm not convinced whether he is an edge forward, by the way. I had this discussion with Blanche. I know that Watson's gone so well, but to me, Radley's your typical 13 and not as elite as an edge forward. But Robinson knows what he's doing better than me. And on the other edge, Crichton, is better than any edge forward on the planet, having a whale of a season. The Raiders have to win, right? We start there to keep the season alive. It's still possible that the Raiders could be the ones that jag that 8th spot, and they do play St. George, though they'll need help from other results. The Roosters want to keep winning to stay top 2, and even if it has to be top 3, as long as they dodge Penrith, the Roosters will be pretty happy with that. Watson and Brandon Smith are big ins. The Suaalii injury, as soon as I saw that, I thought, that's the kind of guy you don't miss him until you end up in a prelim against a Penrith or a Melbourne, and he is a superstar. But luckily for the Roosters, that injury is not as bad as first feared, though he is out this week, along with Waerea-Hargreaves. Raiders named the same 17 that defeated Penrith, and realistically, that was the Raiders' grand final last week, which is why I should have backed them as a best bet. This is an even taller task. Penrith without Cleary down in Canberra, that's actually not as tough as playing the Roosters near full strength at Allianz, I believe. And the line is a good 6 points higher this week for that reason. And I should be on the Roosters probably. I think I say this every week. I'm either on the tricolours or I'm getting out of the way. That's how much respect I've got from them, and that's the opinion I hold of the Roosters. But I probably liken this game to Sharks Warriors. It's pretty obvious as well. The line isn't cheap to play the big home favourite. Though in a day game, I definitely expect that's how it will play out, and the Roosters will overwhelm the Raiders. But it's the same story. When I haven't been on the Roosters recently, I'm telling you guys, I'm begrudgingly passing just because the line is a little higher than I hoped, and you have to draw the line somewhere. I'm never the type of person to be like, oh, I'm backing that outcome no matter what. It is dependent on where the market lands, and the Roosters are not under the radar. Maybe earlier in the year, people had their doubts about whether the Roosters were on the same level as the other elites. Now I think everyone sees the Roosters as an absolute title threat.
100%, mate. They came into last week in their last 3 games averaging 37 points per game. Now when we look at their last 4, that number rises to 40 points per game they are scoring. Meanwhile, the Raiders, I do acknowledge the last win was massive for the club, but I do think it was more so spurred on by the emotion of the occasion of Elliott Whitehead's final game in Canberra. And when you do look at their last 4 games, they're conceding 33 points per game. So there is still a lot of points being leaked by this Canberra side. So the obvious danger, of course, when you combine those two factors is the Roosters score, and they score plenty. And I just think when I look at this encounter and I break it all down, I've already seen this chapter. Daytime conditions in Canberra this year, the Raiders had no answers for the Roosters. And both sides' seasons have continued in similar fashion. We still view the Roosters in the same light, and we still view the Raiders in the same light. Neither have drastically risen or fallen from their first encounter. Additionally, we know the Roosters are very good at Allianz Stadium this year. The Raiders have only ever won 4 times at this ground at a 17% rate. So Ricky Stewart has certainly struggled at his former ground since leaving them. Let's look at the Roosters again. They have won 10 of 10 games this year against bottom 8 opposition. They put them away. They beat these bottom sides. It's what they do. Meanwhile, the Raiders have only won 3 of their last 10 away games. And we know this is statistically their worst ground to play at. I don't think it matters how you slice this cookie, Winnie. I want a piece of it. What is your favorite cookie?
Oh, double chop.
Mine's an Anzac biscuit. Give me Dragons and Roosters at the line. 4 Clarkies collect this week. Of course, both sides play each other on Anzac Day. That pays $3.61 on TopSport when I checked before the show. So we want the Dragons. Well, that line's moved now, actually, Winnie. So it would have to be Dragons minus
3.5.
4.5.
Yeah, it has. But maybe you got to play it at a different bookie where it's still 3.5.
If you can get it at 3.5, I love it. But
it's
if not,
basically $2.90s. So yeah, $3.60 it'll pay.
There you go. Yeah, so if we can get our Dragons minus 3.5, we love it. If not, it has to be minus 4.5.
It's not really fair on you that your Clarkies collect happens to be exactly the same as my best bet, and I shared the best bet first, and then the line moved.
Yeah.
It's luckily it was that number across the board. So grab what you can.
And the Roosters is minus 15.5. That was 14.5 when I put it together. But I don't think it matters too much, mate. So that's my Clarkies collect this week, guys. I've been a bit like the Raiders, win-loss. So hopefully can get us back on track and get those odds up from plus 14.8 and start getting up towards the 20 mark. That'd be awesome.
But win-loss is not bad when you up, getting $3 plus price, to be fair, mate. And my best bet's Manly plus 2.5 first half, $1.88. Panthers win both halves, $1.85. Dragons minus 2.5, $1.90. Titans plus 10.5, $1.90.
Love it, mate. Love you. Love everyone that tuned in. Thank you very much, guys. We will see you next on Sunday within 15 minutes of the final whistle. Of course, that'll be the Clarkies collect leg, hopefully. So it'll be awesome to join everyone on a win. Within 15 minutes of the final whistle of round 26, we'll be back here to recap it all. Enjoy your week. Enjoy your footy this round. And I'll see you then. Over to you, Winnie, to farewell the show.
Season is coming to a close all too quickly. The regular season is for sure anyway. So enjoy it, guys. Enjoy every minute of every game. Let us know your opinions, which of my best bets you like, which you don't, or others that are standing out to you. I always create the mixed matchup on a Wednesday. So just look for that under Rugby League Markets on Toppy and have a fantastic week. Enjoy your footy. Best of luck with what you do back. And we'll be back here Sunday night to talk about it all, rain, hail, or shines. Thanks to you as well, Clark.